great choice by the judges. So when we look at what we're talking about here, it's about giving people that sense of ownership. So we as an industry perhaps facilitating these patient-driven, patient-chosen experiences, and then driving this more cohesive and integrated and seamless journey, which hopefully points towards a more rapid recovery and driving treatment efficiencies. So at this point, we've got in. We've had the effective and the timely referrals. We've had patients get to grips with their condition. And now we've had given the sense of ownership through getting what they want. The next is around getting comfortable.
In the first week, I was sort of drugged up with morphine and everything for the pain relief, and so I would quite often hallucinate and have bad dreams. And this particular wall that faced me, and
engagement. Somebody who is trying to tackle that is Patients Know Best. So it's a British tech startup. And what they're trying to do is take the financial model and provide access to individuals to their clinical data anywhere and any time to bring that sense of control. It allows them to see, hopefully, lab results, their program of care, and connect with the healthcare professionals. So it's giving them that control over their condition that they're looking for. Lucy's talked about, and I've mentioned it, this holistic, seamless, integrated patient journey. Now, I think patients recognise that they're obviously niche in their expertise, but as Lucy describes, they should be exchanging information. For those of you who went to the awards last night, Care for Today and Janssen Healthcare Innovations won two gongs. They got Best Healthcare Professional Initiative and Best Patient Initiative. I'm really proud to say that we're the technology partner for that, and what they have achieved is this seamless journey for patients.
Cardiovascular disease is the leading cause of death both in the UK and worldwide, with the cost of the UK healthcare system reaching £8.7 billion. Well, to address this, Janssen Healthcare Innovation is piloting a new rehabilitation scheme. We went to find out more.
Exercising on a Wednesday afternoon in High Wycombe. It could be the gym, but in fact it's an exercise class at Wycombe Hospital in Buckinghamshire for patients undergoing cardiac rehabilitation.
It's made me exercise my heart, and it's made me work my heart instead of being a little bit afraid of it.
It does stretch you that bit further.
In the past, about 50% of people will be looking for cardiac rehabilitation, and the other 50% weren't really that bothered. I think it's partly because we didn't have a bespoke area in the hospital where we could offer it, where comfortable.
A global corporation that is highly regulated really isn't the worst place to start. So there is an opportunity for us to provide that valuable information with credibility. Then in terms of social media, I think there's two aspects to this. One is connecting peers to peers, and the second is to deliver that emotional support. Organisations like Recovery, Frank, Childline work in very sensitive areas. They have some of the same concerns that we do. Okay, the charities, but they still have a certain degree of reluctance. They've overcome that to create communities that are focused and built around the patient. But I have a really important point. Just because we don't do social media doesn't mean we shouldn't do nothing. So when we start to think about the emotional support, we have things like the CSU app, which talks about people's quality of life. We then have some fantastic work in oncology that allows people to articulate their emotional distress. So we're providing the tools so they can go and see the healthcare professional and bring their unmet emotional needs to the table and start to move it forward.
They'd leave me leaflets on my bed of scary pictures of humongous dialysis machines attached to people, and I just thought, I can't even bear to look at that.
So I'm from a creative agency. I'm sure there's creative agencies in the room, and you definitely work with creative agencies. To hear that in 2015 that's how information has been delivered to a patient is, for me, deeply disturbing. And that's why creativity, I think, is really critical. And it's around crafting that information, being empathetic, having that touch of humanity and consideration to make sure it resonates in the right way and can be as effective as it possibly can. Contrary to that, and this is a piece of print, not digital, which is unusual for me, is Motherbook, which is produced by Dentsu, which is a pregnancy diary, and it's beautifully crafted. It exists over 40 spreads for 40 weeks. It shies away from copy and chooses to use illustration, and it's just a very considerate and empathetic way to deliver the message and take what could be a daunting and long process for the expectant mother and making it something that's much more understandable, and and provide that support all the way through. A great example of how creativity can really make a difference. So ultimately, when we consider this getting to grips, it's about connecting, it's about connecting patients with information, hopefully their peers. It's about bringing that realization about their condition and the acceptance, because we know that engaged patients are likely to improve performance. So then it comes to getting what you want. So in almost every aspect of our lives, we have a sense of control over our experiences. We like to feel that ownership, except it will transpire them when we're a patient, where we're often dictated to us about the treatment that we're going through, losing that ownership and perhaps that empowerment.
I think when I was really ill, I felt quite powerless. I think sometimes I had to take control of my own health to make things happen. So you end up going to different hospitals, nobody knows what your history is, and you end up repeating yourself quite a lot, and doctors don't even communicate between themselves, even in the same hospital. So that level of communication is really fragmented and really frustrating.
And clearly an area where we can have an impact. So this is for me described beautifully by imposed on them. And it comes back to that empowerment and what I With that campaign, you know what, the results weren't the best, but my God, it was a step in the right direction of using creativity and technology to try and do something very different. The next is the Khan Academy. So my son was just starting to think about schools, and I was talking to one of the schools, and he spoke about his Khan Academy, which I thought was fantastic. So it's a flipped classroom concept. So instead of learning in class, you actually learn before you go to class. And it means that when you arrive, you can then validate your learning.
The information, it can be quite overwhelming.
I think we'd all agree that the referral process, communication is critical. It's clearly going to be a time-sensitive issue. But we know as well that patients typically put off assessment when they're doing the list of things to do. It's usually at the bottom of the list, or it's what they're going to do next week. And I think we can play a role in changing that. We also recognise, as Lucy just described, that patients might arrive at that consultation unprepared, and they walk out going, damn it, I wish I'd asked that question. The byproduct of that is that perhaps we miss these vital diagnosis windows. And this isn't just at the start of the journey, this is all the way through that breakdown in communications. So I've got a campaign that's produced in South America that I think really tackles that activation and validation of symptoms. To understanding your condition and coming to terms with it. We can talk about getting what you want and having that sense of ownership over your treatment pathway. Getting comfortable with your changing circumstances, and then obviously getting on with your life. So in terms of getting in, I want Lucy to talk you through her experience.
A lot of the time, you don't even know the questions that you need to be asking. And sometimes on hindsight, you go home and think, oh, maybe I should have asked this, or I should have asked that. But if you're not medically trained and it's a procedure that you know nothing about.
Improve outcomes, and by improving outcomes, drive market share and our commercial success. So why is a smile so worthwhile? For me, there's a logical aspect to this. And for me, a happy patient is perhaps more likely to be a healthy patient. They're probably more likely to listen, they're more likely to commit, they're more likely to adhere, and I hope they've got more to live for. But as we were assembling and preparing the white paper that you have in front of you, as we were preparing for today, we looked at a number of different clinical studies, and we found that subjective well-being actually went much, much further than just some of the softer, more cuddly aspects that I've just spoken about. And if you look at what it can do to improve cardiovascular in terms of reducing the risk of heart disease or improving cancer outcomes, that positive subjective well-being is definitely something where we can bring value and it'll have an impact on patients. We also will recognise that there is a big unmet emotional need. So if we take newly diagnosed cancer patients, 50% suffer with depression and anxiety to a point of which it's having a negative impact on their health. 40% heart attack patients, 40% of MS patients. What I find difficult about these facts is that these are our patients on our treatments, and it is absolutely within our power to drive and improve communication and provide that emotional support. So then we looked at a number of different studies that talk about what is it that makes a more happy patient, a more content patient. So we can see information, communication and emotional support, all things that are within our power to absolutely improve. But beyond that, I'm absolutely convinced that as an industry, we can help to bring control to patients so they feel empowered. We can help to deliver this more holistic journey so that we have continuity. I think we can really influence the environments in which they exist and provide stability to their course of treatment. And obviously we provide the treatment. But the point I'd like to make that I think Lucy makes really, really well is she says that consultants look at you and see the blood test, not a person. And we really need to change that mindset. But then when I think of us as an industry, I think that our focus is primarily based around the pill. We may talk about around the pill or beyond the pill, but we are still talking about the pill. When we start to think about the patient journey, we can start to see it's fragmented. We can start to see there's gaps and there's holes. And for me, this is the platform and the opportunity for the pharma industry to make a real difference and move more towards holistic support. So whether it's simple things like a conversation tool, a decision-making tool, connecting peers to peers and providing information, there is the opportunity for us to provide end-to-end support, hopefully improving outcomes for patients and perhaps driving our commercial success. David Blair of Google, who I think is fantastic, he talks about winning the moments that matter. The NHS describes this as sliding door moments. What they're talking about are these instances where decisions are made and actions are taken that have a direct impact on a patient's outcomes. Largely, these take place outside of the clinical setting. So it's our opportunity to help win as many of those moments with the right information and the right interaction to drive better success. So this was Lucy's story that I introduced you to before. One of the things I asked Lucy to do is actually plot out the moments where we did win as the broadest possible healthcare society. Where did we provide a really meaningful and positive interaction as she went from pre-diagnosis through to referral and then the follow-up. And you can see, in instances, as you saw from that opening clip, in places we do really, really well. I then asked her to plot all the places where we could have won and we could have made a real difference, where she was looking for support, she was looking for information. And you can see, in her opinion, there is a lot more that can be done. The brilliant Rebecca Oni also talks about this. And she says, if we know what it takes to have a healthcare system rather than a sick care system, then why don't we just do it? But of course, those are a lot of different points. So how can we possibly try and support them in each of those different instances? But we're afforded this